Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's webinar. You've got both of us, both Josh and myself, this week to present today. We're really excited to talk to you about how you can set up a summariser of Looker dashboards on GCP using Vertex AI. We had a ton of fun at the Looker hackathon a couple weeks ago building the first version of this. We got really great feedback there at the hackathon. We were fortunate enough to win Best Hack. And so we wanted to share it with all of you. And the good news is that it's open source. And so we wanted to both show you how it works, but also walk you through how you might install this yourself. And it's a really good starting slide when you forget to update the date. But today is not June 12th. It is, in fact, July 10th. So yeah, really excited to have you all here today. Really appreciate you all joining. You're going to have a mix of a presentation between Josh and I, a live demo of the tool, instructions on how to deploy it, and then lots of scope to answer questions at the end. And today is both about showing you the tool that we've built, but also hopefully priming you with how you might be able to go and build something like this for yourself, for your own use case. Not that it wasn't hard work to put it together, but the core building blocks are not like ridiculously complex. And so maybe the tool that we've built isn't the perfect fit for the use case you have in your organization, but you can take inspiration from it to go and build what your organization needs. And so that's very much the goal of today's webinar. If you are joining us for the first time, we run these webinars every other week. Every other Wednesday at this time, we run a webinar focused on Looker content. The goal is not to promote Spectacles as a company necessarily. It is really just to bring the Looker community together and walk you through interesting things that people are doing, whether that's the team at Spectacles or other vendors in the space, consultancy in the space, Looker customers in the space, and really just to kind of promote best practice, show cool things, and show what you can do on Looker as a platform. We've got a really, really cool one in 2 weeks' time. We're going to be joined by a couple of the team at Canva. They have built an amazing alerting system for Looker where they can, with a script, basically add tiles to dashboards where the data might be off or stale or things like that. It's one of the most novel implementations of like data alerting because it's right that I've seen in Looker because it's right where the consumption of the content is happening. And so we're really, really excited to have them. That's in 2 weeks' time. And then actually we have webinars 3 weeks in a row, which is unusual for us, but we then have one the week after with the team at Paradigm, who are going to talk about some of the work that we've been doing with them, and then we have one the week after that. So this one is already live. You can sign up for it on our website or on LinkedIn Live, on LinkedIn. So head over there, sign up for it. You'll get notified as well. But the other two for the end of July and beginning of August will be going live in the coming weeks. So yeah, really grateful to have you all here today, and please do join us for the other ones, particularly this one in 2 weeks' time. I think with the Canva team is going to be really interesting, super actionable for most companies, and they've just built some really, really cool stuff, which is awesome to see. And so on that note, I'm going to hand over to Josh here for the first bit of the webinar, and then I will join you all in a second for the demo. If you have questions while we're going here, we can see them all from LinkedIn and from YouTube. So please drop them. We'll either pick them up as we go in the webinar if they're relevant, or we'll have some time at the end for the full Q&A. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Josh and see you all shortly.
All right, thanks, Dylan. And hi, everyone. I'm Josh Temple. I am one of the co-founders of Spectacles, so Dylan and I work quite closely together. I just wanted to quickly plug, because it's specifically relevant for this topic, we have a Slack community that you can join. I've put the invite link in the chat, and this will be a great place if you want to set up something like this and you go to the open source repository and you try to install it and you run into problems. That'd be a great place to reach out to our team and get support, but also just to engage with people in the community about the things they're building in Looker and have conversations there on this topic. So definitely join us over there if you seek to try and set up Tldd yourself. Like Dylan mentioned, this was a hackathon project that we did for the Looker Vertex AI hackathon that happened about 2 weeks ago. And I just want to plug the Looker hackathons. They're a lot of fun. The Looker team does a great job of supporting everyone. A lot of people join and build really interesting things. So I know it can be hard sometimes to take the time away from your busy work days and get involved in a hackathon, but treating it as a learning and development experience is really, really great use of time, and we had a blast. So I'd love to show you what we built, and Dylan's going to give a demo in a bit, talk about how to set it up in your own GCP project. But what we built was this was motivated by this problem that we often experience as people who consume Looker dashboards in a scheduled format. So you get this email from Looker with a PDF of a dashboard attached. If you're like me, you're getting these sometimes once a day. Sometimes you're getting multiple of them in a single day. And the question is it worth my time to open up this dashboard and look at it? And probably if you're consistently saying no to that question, then your best bet is to just stop sending it to you, as was astutely pointed out on LinkedIn when I posted about this initially. Like, if you don't have time to view the dashboard in the first place, like, what are you doing? But sometimes you're getting a dashboard that most of the time the information is pretty boring, but every once in a while you want to know if something has changed in a material way. And the only way, really, with the current setup in Looker to do that is to open it every day and check the PDF. And so Dylan and I had this idea of what if we could just add a quick summary of what's happening in the dashboard to the email body. That way when I open the email, I know today it's worth going in and looking at the charts, looking at the tables, thinking about the data, because something is worth calling it. And so what we built is Too Long Didn't Dashboard, Tldd, and it uses all the wonderful toys in Google's Vertex AI and the Gemini family of foundation large language models to summarize the information in the dashboard and provide some key insights and some follow-up questions that you could ask about the contents of the dashboard. So here you can see we've got 5 key insights and 5 questions, as well as the original PDF below. So I'll quickly just talk through how it works at a high level, and then Dylan's going to jump into an actual demo of what it does. We built this out as a Looker extension, which is, if you're not familiar with the extension framework in Looker, it's really just the way to add custom UI within Looker. So it is a React application that runs in an iframe within Looker, but we can add all of our own. We can make it look however we want. So it's a great way to customize kind of an application experience within Looker itself. And so from there, the user can interact with our backend API, which runs on Cloud Run, and that has the ability to send prompts to Vertex AI. Vertex AI is really just Google's toolkit for running all kinds of machine learning and AI models, one of which includes all of the default Gemini language models. So we didn't really have to configure anything in Vertex AI. We really just have to call out to it with a prompt and say, here's the dashboard, here's our prompt, please summarize this. And it's a multimodal model, so it knows how to interact with a PDF. We don't really need to convert it to text or anything fancy like that. It just works. And so really our first step was building that proof of concept. And then there's a couple other interesting things we're doing. So we're using an external email service. We're using one called Resend, but you could imagine plugging in anything that sends emails like SendGrid or Mailgun. That's what we're using to actually send the summary to the user. And then we have to be able to collect those scheduled dashboards from Looker because we set it up in Looker as a webhook schedule to fire the PDFs of the dashboard to our service on whatever that schedule might be. So we use cloud storage to store the copies of those PDFs, which also lets us do cool things like, hey, language model, don't just look at this report, but look at the one from last week too, and tell me, has anything changed in a noticeable way. And then finally, we're using a cloud storage bucket to actually store the extension framework code and serve that to Looker, which we could get into if it's interesting. But that's the general design here. So I'm gonna hand it back to Dylan, and you guys can see how this actually works.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Cool. Let me quickly set my screen share, and we will get going. There we go. Sorry for the infinite scroll there for a second. Let me make sure you can hear me. You can. Cool. As Josh said, TLDD, which stands for Too Long Didn't Dashboard, is a Looker extension. And so what's really cool about it is you can, when you set it up, kind of like the Looker Explore Assistant, which we talked about maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago, it is all accessible from within Looker itself. So once you have it installed, it looks like this, which is you go to applications and you can see TLDD here. And so it feels, it is like an external application, but it feels, or like external application, but it feels and is accessible like it's part of Looker, which is really great. And so if you are an admin and you're rolling this out to people in your company, they don't need to learn a new tool. They don't need to get a login for anything else. They can get it all here. And the way that this is actually set up is all with basically a really simple Looker project. And I'm going to talk about installation a bit later once we're back in the slides. But effectively, all that you add to Looker to install this is a project that has a model file, and that's just like a requirement from a Looker point of view. So you'll notice there's just a model file here with just a simple connection. And really everything that we've added to the Looker instance is this 13-line file, manifest file, that points to both the bundled front end and outlines where the back end requests need to go to. And so as Josh talked about in the architecture diagram, really this extension uses two things. It uses a Cloud Run API to make requests to, and it has the front end built, which we, as he said, we store in cloud storage, and it's just accessible here. And so it makes for a very easy setup. And we'll talk about this when we talk about deployment back in the slides. But we've tried to make this as seamless as possible to set up with stuff in Terraform, stuff in GitHub Actions, and things like that. And so what you get is this. And so what you have is summarizers. And so each summarizer typically relates one-to-one to a dashboard. And within here, you have settings like what the name is, who it should go to, whether it should compare to prior reports. So whether when it is summarizing the dashboard, it sends both the old text and the old dashboard to do a comparison, and whether it should attach the PDF as part of the emails. And then you can also write a custom instruction. We'll test this out in a little bit, but you can see here we've told it to write the summary as a wrap in the style of M&M, which is one use case for the custom instructions. More often than not, what you're going to put in there is context about your business or about the dashboard that you're interacting with in order to help the LLM understand what it's reading a little more effectively and like produce the highest quality summary for you. Wrong direction. So if we have this Business Pulse dashboard, this is one that you may have seen lots of Looker partners demonstrating before. It comes with Looker partners as part of their Looker instances. You can see that this is a really information dense dashboard. It has a ton of information about new users acquired and average order price, number of orders this year, orders year over year. There's a whole bunch of information down this dashboard. And as Josh said, you might have the schedule to be received every Monday or even every day, as this is the case for some dashboards. But you may either not know how to read it most effectively. You don't really know what you should be focused on, and you may not know how things have changed relative to the last time you received it. And that is where TLDD can be really, really useful. And so the way that you go about doing this is you come to TLDD and you create a new summarizer. And so I'm going to call this Business Pulse, and I'm going to say that I should get this, and that Josh should get this, and that our colleague Tom should get this, and you can really add as many people here as you want. And these could be either people who have Looker users or don't. There's no limitation here on who you can send it to. So if you've got external parties that you wanted to use this with to send summaries to, or you had people internally who don't have Looker licenses for whatever reason, you can set all that up here. And then I'm going to leave these both ticked, but what they do is, as I said, gives you the option to provide the LLM with context from the prior report, so we can do a comparison, and whether we want the original report attached as part of the PDF. And so what you then do is set up a webhook schedule from the content to actually send the PDF to TLDD. So I'm going to copy this up here, and I'm going to go back to the Business Pulse dashboard, and I'm going to schedule a delivery. And most of you will be familiar with the email. That's probably the one you've used the most, maybe Slack. But there's one here for webhooks. If you're not familiar with webhooks, it's basically a way to request that Looker send your service an API call. to say, hey, when this happens, make an API call to us instead of me making an API call to Looker to send us this information. And so I could schedule this in a second in whatever way I want. But what I want to do first is I want to send a test so that we can see what the summarizer would produce. And so that is sent. And in a second, what Tldd is going to realize is that a PDF has been sent to this endpoint and that there's a PDF that we can use to generate a test summary. And so this often takes a little bit of time, a couple seconds, there you go. And so you can see now it says ready to test. And you can either write custom instructions, or what I'm going to do just initially is see what type of summary it generates for us. And this takes a second. So what's happening here is a prompt is being sent via the Cloud Run service to Gemini, Google's LLM. And it is sending a PDF, if we had one, the prior PDF, and it's got a pre-built prompt that we send with it that comes as part of Tldd. And I'll talk a bit more about how you might iterate on that prompt in the future. But effectively it says, hey, please summarize this, structure it in this way, and all that type of stuff. And so what you see here is that you get a pretty high quality summary reasonably quickly of the dashboard. It tells us that sales have been trending upwards compared to the past 3 years, that we've had 45% more orders compared to the same period last time. And for some people, maybe for some people they'd rather just read the dashboard, but many people would prefer to have it in this text format, particularly when it's doing the comparison with the prior versions. Now, it's worth highlighting that LLMs can get things wrong, particularly if you haven't built your dashboard in a perfect way. So you can see here, it says most customers are acquired through display and email. 73% of users are female and 74% are male, which is obviously not possible. And you can see in the report, if I come back here, it's actually just slightly misinterpreting kind of what this data is. And that's exactly what that custom prompt would be good for. It will be really useful to give context about exactly what that tile is showing to say, hey, actually, here's how you interpret that thing. The other thing that is really cool is you can start adding, you may start thinking about how you build your dashboards a little differently to make it most readable by a summarizer like Tldd, but you can also put text blocks in the dashboard itself that provide instructions, which are going to be useful for the people who are consuming, the real humans who are consuming the dashboards, but it's going to be really useful for Tldd as well. And because it's just reading the PDF, as Josh said, we're not having to convert it to text or anything like that. It just gets it all at one go. It understands that that text is related to that tile, and you can, provide context that way as well. And so we've seen in our testing, there's lots of ways to refine the accuracy of these insights and these questions with both the custom instructions and the changing the dashboard itself to have more instructions built into it. You could even imagine maybe putting at the bottom of the dashboard itself just a text block about here's instructions for how you consume this, which again are going to be useful for the humans who are reading these PDFs and providing so much of data requires context and understanding how that should be consumed, and that's going to be useful for them, but it's also going to be useful for Tldd. And so I'm going to do what we did last time, what you saw in the other one, which is write the summary in the form of a wrap, write it in the style of Eminem, make it rhyme, be as creative as possible. And so what I'm then going to do is I'm going to click test summary. And this is obviously mostly a joke example, but it hopefully demonstrates how this custom instruction is provided to the LLM to then generate the output that happens. And so you can see we get a wrap of some quality back, and at least provides a fun example to demonstrate how this works. And so what I'm then going to do is I'm going to click create. And then it shows up here. And what that then means is any time that webhook URL, which is this one up here, receives a webhook, it is going to run it through that summarizer and it's going to email it to the recipients of that summarizer. And so I'm going to come back here and I'm going to schedule it again. And the actual delivery schedule is dictated entirely by what you do in Looker. So this UI here is what controls the frequency and things like that. There's no frequency dictated in Tldd. It will just know that every time it receives this webhook, it should do what we expect. And so I might want that to be, weekly at 9 a.m. or something like that. And so now, when I click test, I am going to get an email in just a second. I realized I haven't actually got my email open, so let me quickly stop the share and then jump back in just a second. And we'll get that here in just one sec. It takes somewhere between kind of like typically 30 seconds. It needs to send it all. The Cloud Run service needs to boot up and things like that. But as we see here, and I will zoom in and then I'll share my screen again. We get exactly what Josh showed earlier, which is a summary that's been sent to all of us with the key insights, similar to what we just saw in the UI itself, questions, and then the attachment itself. And what's really cool is because it CCs everyone or sends it to everyone, you can then actually reply to this and have a conversation around the content. And so it provides an interface to get the text summary, but then kind of either start having a conversation about these questions that you're seeing here or whatever else it might be. And so again, in our testing, it's been useful that you kind of get it all in one thread and then can collaborate around the results, which is often what would be happening in Slack or somewhere else anyway. And so that is, as I stop the screen share again, that is a demo of the tool. And so let me pull up the slides quickly once more, and we'll just talk about a couple more bits. Let's get back to where we were. Cool. And I'll bring Josh back in as well. So if this is something that you want to deploy yourself, you can do so. If you go to GitHub to Spectacles Tldd, you will find the repo where this all lives. We have tried to make this as easy as possible to deploy. We have set up both Terraform in it, and actually it's ready to go with GitHub Actions that if you're using GitHub will actually manage the deployment for you. So that is all there. There are instructions in the README. We didn't think it'd make for the most interesting webinar to run through it all here. But if you do want to set this up, it is ready to go. We've tested it on a couple Looker instances now. And so you should be able to test it out. You should be able to set these up tomorrow if you want to go and be sent out to your organization. If you do run into any problems, please open an issue on the repo. That's going to be the best way for us to see it, to know that there's something wrong, and we're going to try to be as responsive as possible. And what you're going to need for it is a GCP project. This is built to use a whole bunch of GCP services, including Cloud Run, Cloud Storage, Vertex AI, and Secret Manager, and a couple other small things. That's all taken care of by the Terraform scripts, but you will need a GCP project to manage it. And you're also, in the current version of it, going to need a resend account. And you can set that up for free. But the email service that we have built this with is resend. We hope to support more in the future. We hope maybe to get contributions from people in the future to support others, or we may do it ourselves. But for the moment, if you wanted to do this, you need to set up a resend account. And those are really the three requirements. It's a Looker instance, it's a GCP project, and it is a resend account, and you should be off to the races. But as I said, if you're going through the deployment and you run into any issues, please just let us know. Some of it may just require a little familiarity with Terraform and GitHub Actions. We will try to help with that as much as possible. But that is the other thing that will definitely help when deploying these things. But effectively, you should be able to fork it and get going pretty quickly, which is cool. So if you have any issues, let us know. And also, if you get it working and you start using it, please also let us know. It's really useful feedback to understand both how we can improve it, but also just seeing how it's being used by organizations would be awesome to see. In terms of next steps, there's a couple things that some of which we're going to do with some urgency, and others I think will just happen over time. But the application works today with a couple areas where we'd really like to see it improved. The first is authentication. So when the Looker front end makes a request to the Cloud Run API, those API calls are currently happening in an unauthenticated way. So there's no verification that checks, yes, this API call is coming from the thing that I have set up. And so that is going to be something that we're going to look to introduce over the coming weeks. We'd welcome pull requests for people who want to come and implement it. We've got an issue open for it, so we've walked through how you might want to do it, but that's the first thing we're going to do, because that's a kind of obvious use case where this can be improved. And then a couple other things. We really, not that we didn't put a lot of love and care into the prompt, but it really is like a first version of the prompt that we've put out. And I'm sure for anyone who's used ChatGPT, Gemini, any of these tools, you know that the quality of the prompt that you put in drastically impacts the quality of the output that you get. And so I think there's going to be lots of scope to iterate on that and improve that over time. And would love, as people set this up themselves, it's pretty obvious where in the code base you could change these prompts. And so that is something that when you fork this and set up your own version of it, is also totally customizable. You can go in and customize the prompts. You can put context that, if you know that you'd be putting the same context in every custom instruction, you can actually go and put that directly in the prompt, whether that's like what type of business you are, or what metrics matter most to you, or things like that. You can go and customize those prompts. But I expect we will also see in the default vanilla version of this that's part of the repo, likely iterate on those prompts over time as well, because I'm sure there's things that we could improve there. And then, as I alluded to previously, we currently only support resend, but as Josh said, we'd love to support Mailgun, SendGrid, other email services that are out there. And so we expect that to be something that gets added in time and that can be made configurable as well. And if you do want to work on any of these things, or you actually have a separate improvement that could happen that you imagine benefiting TLDD, please come open a PR or come open an issue and have a conversation with us. If you are not someone who has contributed to open source projects before, this code base is actually probably a pretty good one. It's not super complex. It's if we say so ourselves, reasonably sensibly written. And I think is probably, if you're looking, it's all written in Python, which I guess I should add. But if you're a developer who is been learning Python, wants to get better at it and wants to contribute to something that they might use as part of their day-to-day, please either open a PR if you feel confident enough to do so, or get in touch with us. We're happy to point you in the right direction, walk you through how you might do things and things like that. Open source is how Josh and I met. It's how Spectacle started. It is a thing that has massively personally benefited the quality of code that I now write relative to 4 or 5 years ago. So if it is something that you're looking to improve, please come, have a look at the existing issues, open your own, open a pull request, have a chat with us. We'd love to work with you to improve this. Our plans are to keep TLDD open source, and I think the benefit of that is that the community can contribute, community can improve it over time, which we really hope to see. Sorry, I keep clicking the wrong arrow. We're going to go to Q&A in just a second. So if you do have any questions, if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, please drop them in the chat. We'd love to answer any questions about how we built this, why we built this, how it might be installed, what use cases might be relevant for it. So we'd love to hear anything that you have. And while you all hopefully write a couple questions in, just want to signpost our next webinar again as well. It's going to be in 2 weeks. It's with the team from Canva. They built a really cool system for managing alerting around data incidents within Looker. It's super practical. So I'd highly recommend joining us for that, because I think it's going to be a really great session. So on that note, we will jump to the Q&A, and I'm going to grab some of the questions from the chat. Cool. Got a question from Caitlin. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Can you give an example of a custom instruction you might write for the example you gave about 73% of users are female and 74% are male, which might produce a more accurate summary? Yeah, Josh, I can't remember if you remember exactly what that chart was actually trying to represent, but...
Yeah, sure. So the chart is a little confusing because the title of the chart is User Basic Demographic Profile. But what it's actually showing is the breakdown. Each pie chart is male and female gender, and then within the pie chart it shows the acquisition channels, so like email, display, Facebook, organic, and search. And so the model is misinterpreting the 73 and 74% as the total breakdown of users by gender, when in actuality it's split by gender and then split again into acquisition channel. So I think we could test this, Dylan. I haven't actually tested this. I'd kind of be curious to see what happens. But I think I would put something in there along the lines of just explaining the user basic demographic profile chart represents for male and female users the breakdown by acquisition channel. Like just giving that additional explanation to the model. And then the hope would be that that instruction gets picked up and it improves the inside of it. But we could try it. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly right. I think just like you kind of just want to explain what it's seeing, what the chart is, what in the same way that you'd explain to a human, here's how this should work. And as I alluded to, I think sometimes if you're getting the wrong output from the LLM, I mean, it's not to say that the LLM isn't just like wrong sometimes, but it may also indicate to you that like, hey, maybe this chart or graphic isn't like displayed in the optimal way, or it's not, as Josh said, it's not named in the right way. So we don't think of Tldd as like a testing tool, but it's possible that you could use it in a way that says like, hey, I've built a new dashboard. Let's run it through the summariser to see like what it draws out of it, because it's probably going to do a similar job to what like a human would do. And we'll give you a good sense of like, oh, have I built this dashboard in a way that seems reasonable? And maybe there's another product in our future, someone else's future, that like reviews dashboards, which was actually something that someone in the hackathon did. It wasn't in that way, but they did that as well. So yeah, I think
if you're, in my case, you're working at home and you pull your partner into the room and be like, you have no context here. What do you think this means? It's like the same process, right? It's like what happens if I just take a kind of generic human level intelligence or maybe not human level. Get into that debate later. But what do you think about what's being presented here, and can you grasp it just by reading the captions and the titles and that sort of thing?
I thought for a second you were second guessing whether your wife had human level intelligence, and I'm glad we've got that on video.
She has superhuman intelligence, just for the record.
There we go. Cool. Well, we'll give it a second in case any other questions come in. Josh, anything you wanted to add to the presentation, or kind of around next steps, how people should think about using this, or anything like that?
Just one last plug for the Slack community. So I've put the invite link in the LinkedIn chat. Definitely join us over there. We probably, since Looker was acquired by GCP, it's probably one of the best communities of advanced Looker developers out there. So for this and other questions, it's a great resource.
The other thing I want to shout out, which Josh already did, is the Looker hackathons. We enjoy them a ton. They're a really good way to learn a new either aspect of Looker, or just like new software engineering tooling. We didn't know how to build this before we started the hackathon. And just to shout out to some of the other projects that are out there, particularly one of our customers, PrestaShop, built a really, really cool extension, and I'll try to put this as a comment on the webinar after the fact. They built a new like viz in Looker that calls Gemini and generates a summary. So if you imagine that Tldd takes like a dashboard as an entirety and summarizes it, what their thing did was it was a built-in visualization method in Looker. So in the same way you grab a line chart or a table or a bar chart in Looker, you can grab their like Gemini summary, and it takes the data and summarizes what it's seeing in the table that you've generated with the query. So we'll try to find the repo to that and drop it in the comments. But some people built some really, really cool things. Really wanted to shout out the one from PrestaShop in particular. And so I don't know when the next one is. They typically do 1 or 2 a year, but highly recommend keeping an eye out for the next hackathon as well. Looks like that's it for questions. So we will call it there. But a big thank you to everyone for joining, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time for the webinar with the team at Canva all about centralized learning. Awesome. Thank you very much, everyone.